Hello! So today I'm going to be talking about A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. Now it might be a bit of a short one today because I have an absolute horrendous cold, but I literally only have this morning to review this, otherwise it may just pass me by. I have never read any of Ruth Ozeki's work before, but of course I have heard of her. She's been nominated for many awards over the years. For Christmas I got a little book collection of hers, which included Time Code of a Face and A Book of Form and Emptiness, and of course A Tale for the Time Being, which I'm reviewing today. I have no idea why I was drawn towards this one over the other two, but I don't know, I read the blurb on the back and it just connected with me a bit more. So let's dive into this book. This novel follows two perspectives, a character called Now and a character called Ruth. Now's story is told to us, the reader, through diary entries. Now's diary is washed up on the shore of an island just off of the coast of British Columbia and it is found by Ruth. She finds it sort of wrapped in plastic bags and inside a Hello Kitty lunchbox. Ruth is reading Now's story whilst at the same time giving us, the reader, insights into her own life and her story. Now is telling Ruth and us in turn her story, whilst the story of her family and also within her diary entries of other members of her family. So we have this kind of deep layering of story taking place. This novel, in essence, is really exploring how everything is happening in the now. You know, the now, the character called Now, it is all taking place regardless of time, regardless of what is in the past. The moment we, the reader, engage with it, everything is happening in the now, in this moment. In fact, there's a quote from Marcel Proust in this book which opens up, I think, part 2 of the book, which I think sums up perfectly what this book is trying to do. In reality, every reader, whilst he is reading, is the reader of his own self. The writer's work is merely a kind of optical instrument, which he offers to the reader to permit him to discern what, without the book, he would perhaps never have seen in himself. The reader's recognition of his own self, of what the book says, is proof of its truth. Now that's a pretty gendered quote, but I think why Ruth Ozeki has included it within this book is the idea of saying it is the book, it is the diary, it is our connection in that moment in time which tells us the truths that maybe we already know, but we need to connect with the writing in that way in order to find that truth. Now, I don't want to give too many story beats away because kind of the magic of this book is going on that journey and finding out those story beats as you go, as is the same with every book, so I don't know why I say that every single time, but I like to. However, I will give you enough to know whether maybe you want to pick this one up. Now's father moves from Japan to California, America, where he starts working for a computer company. Now is born, I think, or was raised from a very early age in America. So she has two Japanese parents, but she is brought up in California. She is very much an American, a Californian. However, the dot-com bubble bursts, and due to some bad investments, Now's father loses everything and they have to move back to Japan. In Japan, they really struggle to get by. Now goes back to school, but she is seen very much as an outsider by everyone at her school. All her peers, all her classmates, they despise her for being an outsider, and she is bullied horrendously, both physical and mental abuse. Very early on, Now says in her diary entries that she is going to be killing herself very soon, but she is very, very upbeat in her writing style within this diary, which I think is why it's so engaging from the start for both Ruth, the character in the novel, and us as a reader. There's this kind of nonchalance to the fact that she's going to end it all soon, whilst also talking about what she likes to watch on TV or what she enjoys to eat. Ruth, the character, becomes absolutely fascinated by Now's story. Now, she is not rushing through this diary, she is doing it slowly, and there is reason at the end for why she doesn't just read this all in one hit. As with many books of this style where a character gets a book and you think to yourself, you could have just read that in an hour or so, why is it taking you weeks? I feel like this is the strongest in its reasoning behind why she didn't rush through it. There's been, actually, I've reviewed quite a few books where I've gone, I don't understand why the person didn't just read it in one sitting. That would have solved everything. I think Verity, that Colleen Hoover book, that book is a prime example of going, if you had read that manuscript in one hit, it would have saved us all a lot of time. But anyway, I'm getting way off track. Ruth is fascinated by this diary and she becomes very invested in Now. She treats Now almost as if she exists at that age, at that time. But because of the currents, because of a possible tsunami, because of how long this novel may have taken to wash up on her shores, Now could be 10 years older than she is in the diary, now could have in fact killed herself, like she mentions that she's going to do in the book. But yet somehow Ruth, the character, really connects with now in the moment, seeing her only as this young teenager on the brink of taking her own life. Ruth then starts to invest a lot of her time researching as much as she can all of the little clues and details that Now gives in the diary entries. I totally forgot to say that one of the reasons Now has started this diary is to tell the reader about her 104-year-old grandmother, who was an activist and a Zen Buddhist priest. Although, of course, she constantly gets sidetracked throughout the diary talking about her own life and her father and her mother. Now, it's not until you do a little bit of research that you start to really realise how sort of meta this novel is, because you have the character of Ruth in the novel who's found the diary, who is a writer and an academic. But then Ruth Ozeki in real life is a writer, an academic, a professor, but also a Zen Buddhist priest as well. So all the threads within this book all slowly start to overlap, in which the reality of Ruth, the author of this book, starts to blend beautifully well into Ruth, the character in this book, but then also into the story that Now is telling. Okay, that was a lot of rambling, and I think I'm just going to keep rambling because I'm feeling very coldy now. So I am going to crack straight on with my likes and my dislikes. So what did I like? Well, I really liked the characters. I thought all of the characters in this novel were incredibly engaging and kept me hooked. I also really like the fact that this book balances kind of heartbreak and humour in equal measure, and tonally it works them extremely well. I also really like the writing style, which is very clean and flows smoothly throughout. I loved how structurally this book kept shifting as well. Its presentation and the way it engages you is kind of hard to predict. It would have been very easy to just become a diary entry, back to Ruth, diary entry, back to Ruth. But as the novel progresses, its structure starts to shift and turn slightly, and it starts to become something a little bit more. It's the layers of the story and the layering of story and the presentation of the book that slowly, as it starts to progress, begins to make you as a reader really think about, how do I engage with the now? How do I engage with books in general? And how, as a reader, am I sitting within the story, and when is the story taking place? It's kind of, as I said, it's very meta. It slowly starts to shift your thinking and your engagement, and I thought that was done extremely well. In fact, it's that element that really kept me hooked. The story is solid. It's not brilliant, it's not fantastic, but it's solid, and the characters are incredibly engaging, and the writing keeps moving. However, there were a few moments, and this is me moving on to my only bad comments I have to say about it. There was 3 occasions where my interest really started to wane. I just felt myself sort of dropping out and losing a bit of interest. Now, it always grabbed me back. It did always grab me back, but it was mainly that kind of shift in structure and the way it was forcing me to think about how I approached this book that kept me there, not the story itself. And that's, I know most books, even books I've given 5 stars to, have maybe one moment where things slightly dip, where I start to lose engagement just a little bit. But sometimes the book needs that. It needs to slow down, it needs to take its time just before it ratchets things up again, because pacing wise it might be too intense, blah 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 blah, you know what I mean? And I can really accept that in most books. In fact, many 5-star books that I've read do have those moments. But I think if a book has multiple moments within it, I would say there's at least 3 that I can remember in this where I properly went, oh, I've just lost it a bit. I've lost that connection with the characters. I'm a little bit bored of where this is at the moment. I think if a book has that multiple times, then maybe it probably has a pacing issue or a slight kind of issue in the story it's telling. But honestly, that's it for the bad. And it was only, as I said, a few moments where that happened, and the book always got me back. It always got me back. If I'm being hypercritical, I think Now as a character could be quite Marmitey. I think some people may not engage with her writing style in the diary, or her approach, or her as a character in general. That is possible. And I do feel like if that is the case, you are going to hate this book. If you don't engage with Now, or you don't get on with Now as a character, I don't think the character of Ruth could save the book for you. I think she really is the kind of linchpin in all of this. And if you don't connect with her, I can imagine you really disliking this book. So there you go, I'm going to stop rambling now. Overall, I thought this book was very good to excellent. So 3.5 to 4 stars out of 5 from me. I think it probably falls more in the 3.5 stars area, just because of those story beats, me losing a little bit of interest. If those story beats had just been a little bit more focused, a little bit more connected, the pacing been a little bit sharper, then it probably would have been firmly in the 4-star region. But I can say, I think Ruth Ozeki has done a fantastic job of getting me, the reader, to engage with this novel a bit deeper, a bit further than just the story on the page. So well played. So have you read this book? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you all on the next one. Bye-bye.